So, Jody, one of the things that tends to be the biggest shock that people have when they come into a community like Sync Titan, where they're able to pitch to briefs on a regular basis, is the speed at which briefs turn over.
Sure.
And I think
Yeah.
that's definitely worth discussing because I'll give you a little story. Years ago, I say years ago, I'm probably talking like 4 years ago, I was living in Nashville, and a supervisor friend and I were hanging out downtown at a weekly music industry event where a lot of songwriters would come to this particular bar. It's a Monday night event. It's very common in Nashville. We were hanging out talking, and a bunch of songwriters who were in our vicinity were talking about getting together on Thursday to write for the brief. So my music supervisor friend was curious about this. It caught his ear, and he kind of chimed into the conversation. He's like, "So what are you guys writing for?" They said, "Oh yeah, this brief we got today, blah, 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 blah." And they were planning on writing for it on Thursday. And I remember, he gave me a funny look, and I knew what the look was because we both knew that that brief had already been fulfilled by the time everyone was out there. But that's a common misconception among musicians is that, oh, the brief came in, so let's get together in 5 days and let's write for it. While the reality is that most briefs are fulfilled within a 24-hour period. So I'd love for you to talk about that from your perspective as a supervisor, how that comes about, who you reach out to with those briefs, and your expectations on the timeline of when that brief needs to be fulfilled and why.
Yeah. Well, as a supervisor, I mostly work in film and TV. So speaking to that world specifically, unless there is a long window for a customer, they want something specifically custom, and them being my client, the producers, the production company says, "Hey, there's this scene in a couple episodes from now, and we need something custom for it. Can you gather some things together for us?" If that scenario comes up, which is very rare, but if that scenario comes up, a brief search will go out, a music search will go out to my trusted resources, and I will ask them for something custom. I'll give them the specs of what we're looking for and say, here's how much time we have. Sometimes I might even say, get me a rough demo by Friday of next week, because we have like 3 weeks here. So let's get those rough demos in by Friday. And then a week later, I'll say, all right, you guys, you're in like the top 5. We're looking at 5 of them. You guys are amongst them. Can you get me another version so I can present to production? So we'll have another week to get me that final version. So there's opportunities there, but it's very, very rare that happens. Usually what happens is like this week, today's Friday, but 2 days ago, and Tuesday and Wednesday, we started gathering ideas for The Bachelor. So, as we're gathering ideas for the Bachelor series, this is for the actual show, not The Bachelorette, but for The Bachelor itself. Those ideas need to be submitted very quickly, like that night, if not the next day. The intention there is not to have custom submissions. The intention is that, hey, what do you have on hand? And I'm reaching out to a lot of people. I probably have about 50 contacts that I'm going to. And that's labels, publishers, music libraries, sync agents, trusted people that I know will have the goods. So when I'm reaching out to them, it's like, what do you have? Send it to me ASAP so me and my team can start filtering through submissions. So then we need to be going through submissions and listening to what they have. So for someone to turn around and kick something custom in that timeline and really nail it is very unlikely. That doesn't mean people won't try. There's always going to be someone who tries, and usually I can tell. Usually what happens is it's too on the nose, the custom, because the brief was meant as like a guide, but we're looking for something existing that is, tied to an artist that already has something going on. So when someone goes and creates something custom, unless it's like already in the can as, hey, we created this and it's slated for release next month, on our label, or maybe they're in the studio that week and they're just polishing it up. That's very different than something custom written for brief. The only times I will say that something on the other side of it, Mike, when I've been a sync agent pitching for my catalog, the only time I've ever landed something that I can think of from a custom was for an ad. Ads are very different.
Yeah, 100%.
In the ad world, right? Yeah. You have a bigger budget. There's like a kill fee sometimes if you don't get it. They'll reach out for customs consistently because you know the time that you're putting in, there's a big payoff. With film and TV, it's not always the case. It's usually not the case for customs. But with ads, there are teams in place with studios, production teams specifically for that. That's all they do is ads. They have their studio, they're in there all day long. And when they get requests from this ad agency and that ad agency, them and their team go to work and they turn it around and get it to them by that night or the next day. They have the systems in place and they're dialed in and are ready to do that. That's when that will happen. Creating customs for ads, those can land placements. So not as much with film and TV, but with ads, I've definitely seen that happen.
Yeah, I've actually never chased after a film and TV placement and gotten it. But the ads, you're right. The ads are a different thing because ads actually have a longer timeline. Because generally speaking, in my experience, when you're working with an ad agency to supply music for the ad, they've given you the first round of a brief. Yeah. And typically what happens is it goes through, 3 or 4 rounds, right? You get that first round, you create a bunch of custom pieces, you deliver it 2 days, 3 days later, then they come back and you're like, these are great, but now they've made these changes and now they want this. And that's one difference with ads is that, at least in my experience, you go through cycles of tweaks and changes to really dial in the track. I can tell you as a guitar player who's played on a lot of TV shows for composers, I've been in the studio playing guitar on the cues where the cues immediately leave, they go to the mixer, and then those are being basically, synced to picture in the morning by 10 o'clock in the morning the next day, right? That's how fast the TV shows turn around, even with the composer. And that's why when it comes to the music creator's perspective, on our side, the very first step of the sync placement formula is to build your catalog.
Right.
Not to chase after briefs, but to build your catalog so that you're ready for when the briefs come. I call this getting ahead of the brief. The more that you build your catalog, the more you're in your studio writing authentic music. Of course, you pay attention to TV, you know kind of what the market is, right? So you're writing with those parameters in mind. But as you're building your catalog, when the brief comes across your desk and you look at it and you go, oh, I've got 3 songs in my catalog that I can think of offhand that match this, you can quickly call them up, you can quickly submit them.
Yeah.
Of course, the second step of the process is having all your deliverables ready to go, your alternate mixes, your stems, etc. Third step is the metadata. The metadata is important because if you don't know your catalog and every song in your catalog, like I've got a very large catalog, I can't think of every song in my catalog. I'll go in and I'll do metadata. I'll go find stuff that works, Then I can find the songs in my catalog that fit the request, upload it.
Yeah.
That's how the submission is done. And ultimately, you can literally do this while you're on vacation. When the brief comes across your desk or in your email, provided you actually have access to your catalog, maybe it's sitting in the cloud somewhere, you can find those songs and you can submit them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, people come into sync excited for getting placements. I think when you first find out about what sync is and how accessible it is, which is the reality, it's very accessible to musicians to get songs placed. But yeah, they always jump to step 4 of the formula, right? It's always getting your music heard instead of focusing on studying the market and building your catalog. That should be the first step. Yeah. Get in the market, learn the market you're in, listen to TV, listen to films, pay attention to commercials, watch trailers, listen to what songs they're using, listen to how they're crafted, listen to video games. If you have kids and they play video games, listen to the music that they're using in those games, the source music. Not so much the composed underscore, because that's the hired composer, unless that's the route that you want to take, but the source music that they're using to understand the market that you're entering. Once you have all that knowledge, now you sit back and you write songs, and it's in your subconscious as you're creating songs, as you're recording records, you're thinking without even thinking about it, you know what the market is, and you're just writing with sync in mind. And that's the key difference, right? Everyone wants to write for sync, and that used to be a big thing, and now it's just not enjoyable as being on the receiving end of it to hear songs that are written for sync. And it still does happen. It still happens a lot, actually.
When we have the supervisors come in during our virtual meetups inside our community, 100% of them will all talk about how they do not want songs written for sync.
No,
And
they want real songs from the heart, from the soul.
right.
Yeah.
And all of them articulate that I can hear a song. I can hear when a song was written for sync. And to me, I always refer to that as trying to game the system.
Yeah.
You know, you can't game the system. The people in the business are smart, they're talented, they're skilled, they know their job well. And when you put music up to moving picture, it's very clear how quickly that authenticity is exposed. Okay, if it's an authentic song, it will translate to moving picture in a very unified way. When it's a song that's not authentic, it's also very clear that it doesn't match up. There's something missing. Oftentimes you can't really explain what it is. It's just that feeling where like it just doesn't, it's not gelling. It's not right, you know? And that's why, you know, when you're writing for sync, I think one of the most important things you can do is have a TV in your studio. Have it on mute. Watch visuals as you're writing. And at that point, you're writing with sync in mind. You're not trying to game the system. And what you're writing will more authentically come across when it actually is married to picture.
Authentically being the key word.
Yeah.
You said sometimes, I don't know what it is, it just doesn't fit. What it is it's not always authentic to the individual writing it. So if you're trying to write for something and you're not relating to like what the brief is and what they want, that's naturally going to come across, right? I mean,
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, you focus, right, on rock and guitar and stuff that speaks to you when you're writing. If someone came to you and said, hey, Mike, I need you to craft like a hip hop song for this brief, are you going to do it?
No, I wouldn't even waste my time.
And why not?
Well, I know I'm not going to land it. And that's the first thing. There's no way I'm going to land it because I don't listen to hip hop.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the equipment to create it. I've got the samples to create it. I've got the studio to create it. I have the assets
You could
to
study
create
it. You could study it and analyze it and break it apart and recreate it as a producer, but you choose not to because...
Well, that time is a waste because I could be doing the thing that's authentically me that I know will exponentially have higher percentage of placements than trying to chase after a hip-hop placement. And this goes back to how we started this. You can either get ahead of the briefs by building your catalog of authentic, you know, songs and music that resonates with you as the creator. That's why we create music.
Yeah.
We want to enjoy the process. So that's what the first step of our sync placement formula is. It's to write authentic music, get ahead of the briefs. Yeah. When you're chasing the briefs, it's going to lead to frustration. You're going to get a lot of rejection. There's inauthenticity when it comes to creating that music, right? And that's kind of the whole thing with people who first get into licensing and they first come into our community where they have access to all those briefs that are posted on a regular basis, right? The very first thing that I always notice from people who are new is they'll post in the community. I've been here for 3 days and I'm seeing that the briefs are 12-hour turnarounds. I can't get music done in that time. And what's amazing is you see all the other community members say, well, you're not really supposed to. Yeah. The whole purpose of writing music for sync or with sync in mind and getting into the sync game is to have an authentic outlet for the songs that you love writing. Yeah. And not chasing after all the briefs. That's a hurdle that people have to overcome when they first get into it. But at the same point, as we found with our members, once they get past that hurdle and they have that realization, okay, so I don't have to go chasing after stuff. I can just write the music I love writing. Yeah. That's when they fall into this position of comfort and enjoyment and excitement about the opportunities they have available to them with the music that they already love writing.